We have Shelly Yates. She is a self-professed star being. And a lot of my listeners here, you can relate to that, what a star being is, right? And she is a star being and she's awake in form. She is an international speaker who considers herself a spiritual warrior, here to assist humanity in understanding their true nature and to bring new, vibrant, and helpful information so that we, the people, can raise our own human energy fields, thus creating a new high frequency field for ourselves and our planet. Her intention is to remove the frequency of limitation and bring forward the frequency of information and liberation. Once informed of who we really are, we shall change the course of humanity in a single instant. And welcome to the show, Shelly.
Hi.
How do you do, like, when people introduce you, right? You just say, okay, yeah, I've been doing that for a while, right?
Yeah, well, I have been in contact with otherworldly beings since 2002. So it's 17 years. And I have gone all over the place with, I can't even believe my own story, to, holy God, I can't believe this is happening to me. But nothing's happening to me that can't happen to all of us.
Right.
I just happen to put my hand up and say, I volunteer. And when I get back, I got a letter to write about that.
Well, we're glad you are here. We're glad you made it. You have an extraordinary story to tell and to share with our listeners, and about drownings. I think we'll start with that, and we'll continue on to, you have an amazing event that you're putting together that all of our listeners and all of their friends and all of humanity can become a part of, that can really help us raise consciousness and help heal ourselves and our planet. So we'll get to that as well. So everyone's just hang in there and really listen to this story, because it's going to rock your world. So we'll kind of start maybe wherever the 2002, right, is when this happened to you.
Yeah, well, 2002, I was an atheist, just to set the scene here. I used to joke that the only time I was ever saying the word God, I was swearing in some manner. So I certainly wasn't an individual going into this experience with a lot of faith or hope or any of those types of things. So anyway, it's a really long story and I can get caught up in it. So I will try to give it to you in the smallest, best way. So it was November 14th. It was 1:21 in the afternoon, and I hydroplaned over a guardrail into a flooded marsh. And I was in my car. I had my 4-year-old son in the car with me, and we landed in the marsh. And it was like an explosion, confused and upside down. So anyway, I had time to say to my son that, we're going to get out of the car. Everything's fine. I'm just going to put down the window. We're going to crawl out, because where I live, we have marshes that there's a lot of reeds. So I thought I was, hung up. Anyway, not only was I not in a marshy area, I was in a lake. And as soon as I put my finger on the button to let the water come in, the car started to fill up. So I was a lifeguard. I was I was a scuba diver. I was like, I'm getting out of this car. There's no way I'm going to get trapped in this car. And I've got hold of my kid, and I'm just waiting for the opportunity to get out. But the opportunity never came. And as water came up over my face, I was able to say to my son, hold your breath.
How old is he?
He was 4.
Oh, your baby.
Yeah. And I had time to look at him. We had time to talk. And, panic is your enemy. Just hold your breath. Mom's getting us out of here. And he believed me, he believed me. So as the water came up over my head, I went about trying to get out of the car, but we were upside down. So I was disoriented. And the more the water was compressing on my body, I needed to breathe. And as soon as I took a breath in, then I really started to panic, because I was in control to that moment. And anyway, as soon as that experience happened, I realized that my son too was breathing in water. So now I'm in a panic state. And all of a sudden, just like your voice right here, I hear this relaxing or this booming, relax, relax. Well, I said, well, I didn't take orders when I was living, and I'm not taking orders when I'm dying, you
Right.
know, like mouthy right to the end. So anyway, this booming voice is demanding or commanding, you know, to relax. And all of a sudden it just knew it wasn't going to get me that way. It wasn't going to win my heart, you know, so it started to coo. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. We're right here. We're going to help you. And I was like, oh man, this, you know, this can't be real. But I had stopped looking for my son's body. I was in some sort of trance. And still I'm thinking, oh, well, this is what it's like to die, I guess. But ultimately, the voice told me, we can't help you till you give yourself over to the water. So I had to die in order to get the help that I needed. And I did die. And I left my body through the top of my head, which is very different than going down the tunnel into the light. Now, 17 years later, I know these things, but then I didn't. And I was transported to an area or like a holding cell where I was in communication with 6 beings. And they were dark and light. And it was very obvious that they were playing a game and that we are in some sort of game. We're in something that we are contributing to, but there's also influences on us. And so as they're playing the game, which is another long story, it comes down to the fact that they say we are harmony makers and chaos creators, and we're essential to your experience on this planet.
So is it like a dark council and a light council, or
that's what it looked like and felt like to me. Now, I didn't have a body, I just had consciousness. But to me, it was definitely, we're both essential to your experience. Anyway, they said, we're going to put you back in your body. We're going to tell you what you need to bring your son back. We're going to have everything in place. And throughout the course of the experience, sure enough, they showed me putting stuff on a board. And they said, now's the time to have faith. Now it's the time to have faith. And they called me child. And the next thing I know, I was waking up on the side of the road.
what?
Yeah, so I've been underwater for over 15 minutes. Nobody knew exactly for sure, but that's how long it took to get me out of the car. So it was at least the 15 minutes. So they hauled me out, they dragged me over the guardrail, they started the CPR, another 7 minutes passed. My son's still in the lake. So when all this ends, I'm like, oh my God, get my baby out of the lake. And now they realize he's still in the lake. Well, this is where there's all this debate about how long he was in the lake. Well, they went and got a boom truck. And they brought the boom truck. And then they had to put the arms out and put the axle up. And, you know, this kid was underwater for over 40 minutes. There's just no doubt in my mind. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, the water was really cold. No, Barbara, no, there's something that's happened in this experience with my son. So when I get to the hospital, he's a total mess. He's bleeding out of every tube. They said that his lungs is completely filled with blood and water. He's got burn marks on his body from where they paddled his body. Anyway, so over the course of 3 days, I follow the instructions of these beings. Now, you know, you're in the hallway of a major hospital thinking you're having a complete nervous breakdown because something is speaking to you from somewhere else.
Right. And no one hears it but you.
Nobody is hearing it. Nobody is seeing the things I'm telling them I'm seeing. Everybody's just like, oh, poor Shelly's lost her mind. Just do whatever she says. And actually, the story does come out that nobody believed me. Everybody was just appeasing me. And it's the most amazing thing.
Because so much, right? You're just going through it.
apparently nobody believed me, but I thought they all did. So
And you were having them play music, right? Come into his room and play music, right?
right. Well, this was part of the instructions from the beings that they wanted us to hook up. They wanted us to hook up. You know, when you put a blood into your arm from another person, well, when you put both hands on another human body, you literally hook up an energy transfer where it's moving through you and back into the other person. And it's how healing works. You don't heal somebody, they borrow from you that which they need. So the beings had showed me Evan's essence, and the essence was so small and depleted, there was just nothing left to it. So they wanted me to rebuild it, but they said no one person can give that much. So hundreds and hundreds of people I didn't even know came to the hospital. And I'm trying not to be too weird, you know, like put your hands on them, and they're like, what, you know, and the instructions were put your hands on them, but not for more than 20 minutes. And then to talk about your greatest joy. What did you love about being a human?
Wow.
What's your favorite thing about, you know, ice cream? So many people talked about sex. Well, that's a story. You can't even imagine the stories that grew out of that one. But people wanted to bring their joy to him. So the instructions were do not expose him to anything but joyful conversation. Act as if he's well and aware and awake, and continue to touch him and continue to go through these cycles. Deposit the energy for 20 minutes, take your hands off, talk about your joy, be in gratitude, rotate the room, start again. So, you know, anyway, basically by the end of the third day, he had not gotten better, Barb. He had gotten worse and worse and worse. You know, he was bleeding into everything. He was not getting better. And at the end of the third day, when we were coming up on the time, I was called into his room because he had had a spontaneous regeneration. Like everything
Say
about
that
him. Well, he had had a spontaneous regeneration. So when I went in, they're like, quick, come, he's awake. And when I went in, he was sitting up, all the tubes were running clear, the burns on his chest were gone, the MRI, like the CAT scan things they had done for his brain, those were gone. And he was looking at me, and the doctors were like, well, your son is brain dead, you know. Right. So he doesn't know who you are. This is just reflex. And I was able to prompt him, like, you know, is my name Sheila, or is it, you know, Shirley or Shelly? And he's like, what, you don't know your own name? And he's looking at me, and I knew he was perfectly there. Right. So when the beings came then with the new project, Fire the Grid project, they referenced what had happened in the hospital. And they said, what you did for a dying boy with a small group of people, you can do for a dying planet with a large group. So it was all about, yeah, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, I love that. I love it. So you had to experience it yourself and go through it yourself and understand it before you could help others to understand it. So it's experiential.
Absolutely. Well, I could not have imagined what had happened. Like I said, this is a bigger story than I could tell here, but it's just so unbelievable. And they have, and I say they with a capital T, they have the ability to help us. They want to help us. You know, for 17 years, they've come to me with direction on ways to help, direction on what, and to teach, to tell people, to share like I am right now. And I am a reluctant messenger because I have not wanted to come forward with my life. But we're at a point that we have to do the next step. So basically, the story I just told you is the smallest rendition of the most incredible miracle. Right. You know, not only did I survive the accident to come back and say he's still in the water, you know, they were able to get him out.
So you're a miracle and he's a miracle.
Yeah, because I was definitely underwater 15 plus minutes myself.
Right.
Yeah. So whatever, but it wasn't, it's a miraculous event, but I agreed to do it.
Mhm.
And many of us are here agreeing to do things. I'm sure you know that you have agreed
Yeah.
to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, you're Johnny Appleseed, right? Ping, ping, ping.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you literally, I often joke that you can come up to somebody's forehead and get them ping, and they go, oh, wow. So, you know, part of me coming forward at this point is we have another Fire the Grid project to do, but it's also to come forward now and teach the people that you are not what you think you are. We are vessels, we're suits, I think Lady Gaga called us a meat suit, you know.
Right.
We're vessels for these incredible, omnipotent, high frequency beings.
Yes.
And they've been referenced throughout all of history. Some people call them souls, prana, chi. For me, they're beings.
Mhm.
And in every single one of us is one of them.
Right. Which is us.
Which is all us.
Mhm.
So once you start, you know, people love to call me the hippy dippy and the woohoo and oh, woohoo, and we're just going to make it all better. But, you know, the ancients have talked about us dreaming our world into being since the dawn of time. And Fire the Grid 1 was about receiving information and figuring out what was going on. Now, Fire the Grid 2 that's coming up in the next couple of weeks came out of nowhere. You know, I've had this ongoing communication with these beings for 17 years since they told me what to do for Evan. Then they told me what to do for Fire the Grid. And Barbara, we had no social media.
I know when I read that, I was just astounded. Just astounded.
We had no social media, but we had millions and millions and millions of people participate in this thing.
Right.
Because the being said, you will feel truth in it. If you're drawn to it, share it with somebody, you'll feel truth in it. It's not what I'm trying to say to you or what I'm trying to give to you or what I'm doing, period. I'm just a mouthpiece.
Well, you hold space for it.
Yeah, I have opened to hearing this information, which we can all open and hear. There's nothing special about that. But for whatever reason, my story is the validator.
Right.
Right? If we can do this with a small group of people and a dying boy, holy God, what can we do when we concentrate our own beautiful, omnipotent power that lives inside of us? But the first thing you have to do is recognize it's there.
Right. So when you did the first Fire the Grid, let's talk about that. Did it come in how did it come to you? How did the information come to you that this is how you're going to do it, how you're going to proceed?
Well, it came in really specific instructions, the same way with my son. You know, it was, everything about it was do this, do this, do this. So before they could ever get me to do a project for them or to get me to do anything for, the first thing they had to do was teach me to listen. And one of
Yeah, guilty.
Wait, let's say that again for our listeners. I think that's the important first step, right?
The most important first step, yes, as a human, to be taught to listen.
Is to listen, not stay busy, right? But to listen. Okay.
To listen, yeah.
Love it.
I remember reading about Barbara Brenner. She wrote Hands of Light.
Yeah,
and she talked about for ages, she kept hearing, go in the yard and cut a limb off the tree. Go in the yard and cut a limb off the tree. And she was like, oh, for God's sake. So she finally went out and did it. And she brought the limb in and she called out, you know, okay, I did it. Why did I do it? And the response was, we needed to know you would listen. And that's pretty much been my thing since the dawn of this thing, was like, can we get her to listen? Because it took an awful lot to make an obstinate enough human to be here doing it. But then you can't control what you created.
Right, exactly.
So all the years these beings are like, go teach. I'm like, no. I don't want to do that. But anyway, here we are. You know, what we did with Evan, right? We acknowledged the divinity inside of us. Now, whether or not my friends knew they were doing that or not, in the doing, you create the reality. So they did what I asked, right? So despite the fact that they thought they were doing that or not, they were doing it, right? And in the doing, we create the reality. Why else would we do it?
And it was the joy was the key, the joyous energy. And it doesn't matter why or what reason, that's the same energy, joy.
Right. And it didn't matter. And so here we are in a major Canadian hospital, you know, for all of Atlantic Canada. Yeah. And the doctors are just puzzled beyond, you know, what's going on here. And I remember a couple of times them coming and saying, well, you know, this is highly unorthodox.
So thank you.
I said, well, what the hell do you care? You already said he's dead.
Right.
Oh,
right.
No, don't worry about it. Aliens told me to do it.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if, yeah. Can you imagine if I'd said that? They already thought I was crazy.
But there's a lot of freedom in that.
There was, yeah. So anyway, Fire the Grid came the same way the instructions came with Evan. Now, the first thing they had to teach me was to listen.
Right, right.
So every time I would sit in water, I could hear them like somebody turned all the dials up. And so they started to teach me to meditate. They started to teach me to connect. They taught me, you know, little prayers that would make the human part of me feel safe. Because if the human part of you doesn't feel safe, you can't connect with them.
Right.
And if that's what you want to do, and I think that's what most people are trying to do, is connect with that higher piece of themselves.
So in water, I think I got you there. And were you in a bathtub or connecting?
My bathtub was where I started, and then I had a hot tub, which just only amplified the whole thing.
But what's wild is Barbara and I just had a great conversation, I think 2 weeks ago, with a gentleman who does, Alex Urbina, who does I call it the cosmic egg, where you go inside, it's a geometrical egg, and you can communicate with, it's the whole thing. And he talked about getting the download, you know, for this type of thing in the shower. And he's like, that stuff just happens to me. And it's same stuff with me. And it's like water is interesting that way.
Water is a conduit for communication. It's got the flow that we need. So when you think about the fact that you're dealing with, you know, 10,000 million watts, and then off down here in like, you know, 857 hertz.
Wow.
So there's a great deal of energy between those two, and they want us to understand that the communication is a flow, and the thing that unites us to that natural flow comes out of our solar plexus. It's kind of a cosmic umbilical cord, and the more we strengthen that cosmic umbilical cord, the more we can connect with this information. Like I said, there's nothing happening to me and for me that couldn't happen to all of us if you just open that channel.
And that's why the first thing is you have to be okay with yourself as a human kind of thing, to just allow that to be okay, opening or connecting or feeling that.
Absolutely. And you have to be able to say yes to this statement. I believe I am more than the flesh and bones of this body.
Right.
As soon as you say yes to that statement, then all things are possible. All things are possible because you have recognized your supernaturalness, your beingness by saying yes. I acknowledge that there's more to me than the suit or the vessel that I live in.
Right. And like the First Nations, they call it a skin dressing. So when they lay down their skin dressing or they lay down their robe, I love that.
Right. Yes, exactly. And in this case, I was saying about learning to listen. So I'm in the tub, my channels are wide open. You can feel the prana tube. Now, these are all words I learned since my experience. You know, this tube that holds us upright is, you know, I'm in the tub, I'm having these, my body's swirling with energy, and the communication's so clear. But then they show me a kangaroo, and I'm like, oh, that's a kangaroo. And I hear ding, 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 ding. Now, this ding, ding, ding was happening in the hospital as well. And I remember joking that it was the Bob Barker hour, you know, like, ding, 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 you got it. And so I was getting the ding, ding, dings in the hospital. Now here I am in my bathtub, you know, everything's calmed down. And they're saying, you have to learn to communicate with us. So then I saw like the desert, and I was like, oh, that's a desert. And, like, and then they showed me this big red rock in the middle of Australia. I was like, that's the big red rock in the middle of Australia.
Ding, 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 ding.
Well, and then I heard Ayers Rock. And so now I got something to get out and Google, because I didn't know what it was called.
Right.
So over the course of this, I'm always looking for that validator, that proof. Give me something, you know, some proof, which I'm sure we all do when we start to open this communication. So anyway, I said, Australia, are you trying to say Australia? And they go, ding, 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 ding. I was like, for God's sakes, why didn't you say Australia? And then they said in a crisp voice, we won't always be able to do that.
Oh.
You have to be able to look for the signs, the symbols, the numerologies, the things that go ping, and you're like, wait, now what was that? So you become somebody who's invested in your communication. You're looking for it.
Right.
Now, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, I was seeing images. I saw this temple, and I was like, what the heck is that? And there was like Chichen Itza, and I'm Googling, and I'm like, oh, Chichen Itza, look at that. It's real. So anyway, these beings start to tell me about this world project, Fire the Grid. And they're telling me about the fact that, and we're back to, I think this is a game. You know, I've seen so much. It's like we're in this gridded system. It's not just around us, it runs between us, you know. And the reason birds and animals can do what they do and never touch each other is because that grid is on.
Right.
They know where they are all the time.
Frequency.
Right. They're constantly using frequency to communicate with the grid around them.
Yeah. Now, like air is not air to a bird. It's a completely different experience.
Correct. And animals have been attached to this grid since the dawn of time. They didn't lose the connection. Now, you know, we can get into a huge debate about which extraterrestrial did what, and who's the good guy, and did they mine for gold, and did they, you know, you can beat that horse to death and argue and fight and disintegrate. Because these are just the interesting bits and pieces of our history. These are just the things that have got us enough going, oh, wow, we're all interested in these supernatural type of things. Wow, yeah, I believe more in this vein and you believe more in that vein. But the thing that binds us is the fact that we believe it.
Right, the consciousness.
Something has happened to our planet.
So here's something today. I found Pew Research, arguably one of the world's most reputable research centers. Overall, roughly 6 in 10 American adults accept that at least one of these New Age beliefs in all of these consciousness, rebirth after death, connecting with people that have died, believe that psychic and spiritual energy can be found in physical objects. And that includes Christianity, that almost half of Christians believe in life, obviously life after death, but also communicating with these things. So it is kind of a new world that is ready for these type of conversations.
And I'll tell you, even our children's television has been getting us ready for the re-entrance of magic into our lives.
How so?
Well, Harry Potter was humongous. You know, it's about bringing that magic back into our lives. We lost it when the frequency dropped.
Yeah, and there's something undeniable about that keeps these things alive in our culture.
And that's because, okay, so say, and I'll throw it out there, unicorns vibrate at the frequency of 2000 hertz.
Mhm.
But we're living in such a limitation of 200 hertz. You're not likely to see a unicorn.
Or just
So-
barely just a speck.
Well, so basically, the grid that lives around the Earth, the grid that lives between us, is all frequency. In the other world, we're only frequency and light. And they said that every human voice is a note in the symphony of the universe.
Oh, I love that. Oh, say
they're
that
so-
again, Shelly. I love that.
Every human voice is a note in the symphony of the universe.
I love that.
They're very poetic. You know, they're amazing, and they're amazing graphic designers and how things should look, and they, I think they take great delight in doing stuff like that.
You're artists.
So in the very beginning, Fire the Grid came to me the same way they showed me images in the bathtub of the kangaroo and so on. They showed me images over and over again. Now they were showing me how this grid operated and how, and this is such an interesting story. They're showing me the grid. They're saying that, you know, you get a hexagon and you get a hexagon and you get a hexagon, and it doesn't matter how rich you are, or you only get one hexagon. And then they said, even Donald Trump can't buy another one. And I was like, why would you talk about him? This is way back in like 2006. Oh, yeah, because they already knew.
Mm-hmm.
So to give me that little piece of information, I laughed. And I was like, well, who the hell is he? Doesn't he do like The Apprentice or something? You know? So anyway, the beings are giving me what the grid is, how this thing works, how it works between us, how we are all connected. You know, in Los Angeles, Kevin Bacon, you know, you guys all played the 6 degrees of
Kevin Bacon.
Of Kevin Bacon. But the truth is actually 6 degrees of connection.
Mm.
But humans love to separate. Humans are not naturally drawn to cohesiveness. They like to separate. They want to be individuals. But what if I told you we can be individuals and collective beings? Right? There's a way we can have it all.
Maybe
Right.
that's the way it works best, right?
Well,
Naturally.
exactly, because this new world that's coming for us, this Fire the Grid information now is moving towards this new world that's coming for us. And we are going to play a pivotal role in where that game starts.
Yeah.
Now we can go look at Mario Kart, you know, level 1. You know, I got all the buttons, I ate all the ducks. I don't know what you do in Mario Kart, but you level up. And you get to the next level, and you level up, and you get to the next level. And that's, again, why I'm saying I really think that we are in some sort of game board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was dying and they had me up in the glass room with them, they showed me a game board that they were playing with. And they showed me a die that tumbled across the board. You know, like more and more, I'm just convinced that we're in some sort of game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this grid system hooks every single one of us up. And the truth of one believer, when you fire your grid, you light up 1,000 hexagons.
Huh.
So everybody gets a hexagon. Every living creature gets a hexagon, from the smallest little creature. It goes back to the respect all life. You know, there's lots of different cultural religions and dogma that talks about respecting all life. That's because each one is living its life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have the right to take it away from it.
Right. On the earth plane.
On the earth plane, every creature that has a life is a being.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking to the smallest little creatures to the largest, you know, most advanced creatures. We get one hexagon on that grid. Now, the animals are all living in harmony and have been since the dawn of time. It's us that are out of that harmonic place. And So what the beings taught me was you were either giving to that grid or you're taking from it. And the grid, when Fire the Grid happened in 2007, my gosh, my tongue is just like, what year was that?
Yes.
We literally, what the beings showed me was when they brought the paddles down on Evan's little body, boom, boom. That's what we did to the grid. We pulsed it and we brought it back to its vibrancy. We're a part of it. We can do this. It's our divine right to connect to this grid. So we pulsed it back into a really living, vibrant grid. And that's what we have right now. But it is also rapidly increasing its frequency. And it's going to continue to rapidly increase its frequency with or without us.
Right.
So if you don't participate in lifting your field, my dogs just came into the room. I'm so sorry.
All good, all good.
We are literally being attacked by puppies here.
Oh, you have puppies?
Yee, puppies. Okay.
Oh,
Hi,
thank
sweeties.
babies.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. We're puppy people. So
Puppy people.
yes.
Yeah. So basically, we are of the same stuff in the grid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when they first started showing me, I had a real problem with the word God. You know, God from my past was filled with shame and guilt and feeling yucky. You know, like I didn't like that word. I didn't know how to use it with retrospect to the fact that we're talking about otherworldlies.
Right.
And it was actually a very famous otherworldly ET kind of guy that said to me, well, you know, who do you think made the ETs and the energy?
Right.
God. So I changed God to the giver of directions.
Oh, all right.
Because it was more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was that we are all from this gigantic pool of light, and we're just little cells, we're photons from that pool. And when that photon leaves the pool, there's a thread that hooks up through our third chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And the photon, though, is in the grid of what I'm talking about. So it looks like little frosted straws, and inside is a photon. And if your photon is going, wing, 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 this is a happy, joyful, grateful photon, and it's pulsing the grid, and it's
fired up.
It's fired up. Now, when you're in despair and depression, and oh, everybody hates me, and I'm no good, and oh, you know, your little hexagon is going so slow, it's like molasses.
Right.
And it's going around in your hexagon going, give me some energy, you know. So you're like a big drain, you're a cosmic drain on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're trying to do is get to the highest level of Mario Kart the fastest, because that's where we're going to start the new game. As where does that sound?
No, it makes sense.
So that's where we want to start the new game. Now, if you can take a running leap, it's so much better than trying to hop off the edge, right? So that's what we're being given an opportunity right now to do, is vote.
Yeah.
Right? So this Fire the Grid is coming up that we're going to pulse this grid with as much joy as possible. And while we're experiencing that joy, eating, drinking, making love, playing music, coloring with our kids, you know, being present with what a blessing our suits are.
Right, to be human.
They're built for pleasure. The suits are built for pleasure. Let's get them moving that direction. But right now, what they want from us is to assist ourselves by getting this field as high as humanly possible. Now, they talked about 5 minutes a day with joy and gratitude. They talked about apps and all sorts of stuff. And then they showed up with no time to do anything. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I thought we had a year. And they were like, something's happened. And this COVID thing, something's happened. And they're trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Elevate us
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Barb, in the 17 years I've been talking to these beings, I've never had any sense of come on now.
Right, right.
And I don't like the word urgency because it makes it seem a little too.
No, but the door's open now.
Yeah, and something has happened energetically to the system that they want us to get a jump on it.
I love it. So we're going to jump, like a jump start.
Like a jump start, yes.
Do
They want us, and they want us to activate our own. They want us to activate our own divine body,
right,
to do that. And you know, they gave principles to live by, and the principles they gave to live by were first and foremost, do no harm. First and foremost, to yourself. For until you love yourself, you will never love another.
Exactly. That's such a hard lesson to learn, you know? But once you learn it, you got it down, right?
And that is one of the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one was do all that you do with honesty and integrity. It will deepen your relationships with each other, your planet, and the stars. And then the third one was live your joy fully without judgment.
Oh, I love
and
that.
Say thank you. And those three principles alone make us all self-policing.
Mm-hmm.
They're so simple, but everything that comes from them is so simple. So the concept of do no harm, honesty, integrity, and, you know, live your joy fully without judgment and say thank you. And my favorite story about it is I'm out in British Columbia, and there's a big audience, and way in the back, this man stands up and he says, well, my human joy is to rob a bank. And all I could say was, well, how human of you, because I gave you three principles and you picked the one you liked.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so if you can rob a bank with honesty and integrity, and if you can rob a bank with do no harm, go for it.
Yeah.
You know, yeehaw, right on. But I don't think that's possible.
I don't think that's possible either.
So this is why we become self-policing. So every decision that we make is either moving towards our goals or away from our goals.
Yeah.
And in this case, becoming high frequency or becoming low frequency.
So it's a self-responsibility.
You can only look after one person in this story. You can bring people to it. You know, you're doing that all the time. Both of you are bringing people to the truth, bringing people to the choice, but you can't walk it for them.
No.
Every choice you make in life is either a high frequency choice or a low frequency choice, based on the principles I just gave you.
Right. And we talk about being responsible to them, but not for them.
Correct. And even as a messenger, which is all I am, as a messenger, my only job is to tell you and anybody else who wants to hear it, look, there's more than meets the eye. We do have assistance. We do, and we can call out to them. So one of the stories they gave me, quite a lengthy, you know, over and over again, was Horton Hears a Who by Dr. Seuss. And I was like, why do you keep talking about Horton Hears a Who? But anyway, short story, Horton has a little flower and on it is a little world. And he's trying to protect it. And he's telling all the people, look, there's a little world in here and we have to protect it. And they're like, oh my God, Horton's gone crazy. You know, let's get that little world. We'll stomp on it and save Horton from himself. Poor crazy Horton, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, as it goes on, he gets all this peril because everybody's trying to help him. Oh, you know, don't believe in that little world. And anyway, finally, Horton arranges with the mayor of the little world to go and make sure everybody's calling out. Everybody, call out, call out, call out. Well,
fire up the grid. I get it. What a perfect story.
Right. And I'll tell you, the coolest part of that story was in the end of the story, the mayor finds the littlest who in a corner with a yo-yo not making a sound. And he says, why didn't you help? Why didn't you call out? And the littlest who says, I'm so insignificant and small. How could I ever help? And that is our story. That is our true story. That the littlest of us, we're here, we're here, we're here. There's enough of us. We desire change. Say yes. Vote yes. Let's move this into the right direction.
Yeah, everybody's got one hexagon in the grid.
Right. It's your vote.
Yeah.
You know, light that sucker up. And for your light, you're going to spread it out 1,000, which means for the 8 billion of us that's here, we don't need as many as we think we need. Now, I'm no good at math and stuff, but I know it's 1% of 1% or.
So I remember hearing about Fire in the Grid back in 2007, driving and obviously pre-internet and the whole thing. And it was just the coolest thing. And you hear it from friends. You know, and just how the words spread. I was in the meditation community, spiritual community and all that. So I would be the type of person to get it, but that was really cool. And everybody was positive about it.
Well, you know, some amazing things happened. You know, one of them was Princeton University got involved and they measured the energy field. And their findings were that Fire the Grid was the only event that had changed the field and it had never gone back. You can Google that online. It's all over the place. You know, that we the people did that. We did something. And Princeton contacted us and said, what did you do? And I said, I don't know what we did. You know, we followed the instructions. Emoto, the guy who does the water, he got involved and he made a Fire the Grid water crystal. Wow. And he was so moved by the story of Fire the Grid and the water that he actually went to Bolivia with the presidential body and they went up and did a water blessing of Mount Titicaca. You know, it's like, and if I get any of those words wrong, I apologize.
Say it again.
But so, you know, Fire the Grid was huge with no social media.
Right.
You know, and it was free. It's still free.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, tell your friend, tell your friend, tell your friend. Now they had a little campaign in mind. The beings always have something cool. They called it the Yellow Ribbon Campaign. You know, they said, you humans love ribbons. Tie a yellow ribbon around your left arm and just tell, you know, how many are we, you know? And I said, well, you've given us no time to do any campaigns with like 2 weeks.
Right. But we're going to show up and we can show up and we're just about to go on break. And so for our listeners you've got our interest, where do they go? How do we get there? And when we come back, we'll really go into Fire the Grid 2.
Cool. You want me to tell you where? It's firethegrid2.org.
Okay.
Is where we're living right now. Firethegrid2.org. And so as far as I know, they're doing Instagram and YouTube and
the full schedule, the full GMT time zone schedule is up there for no matter where you are around the world.
For no matter where you are in the world. Yeah. And when we did Fire the Grid the first time around, you'd be blown away. We had information from Egypt, from Kuwait, from the South Pole. You know, it was amazing where we were getting emails from, because like I said, we didn't have social media.
Right.
Well, this is Fire the Grid, the number 2.org. Yep. So it's firethegrid2.org.
Yeah.
So go there, check it out. You'll see all the information that you'll need to be a part of this. And it really is a tell your friends, tell everybody you know, pass it on, post it in all over your social media, and let's get this thing going. Let's get it moving and showing up.
Oh yeah, it's the ultimate grassroots. It's first believe in yourself and who you really are, and then unify. And in that unification, be that powerful group to make these changes happen rapidly. Because that's what we need. We need things to happen rapidly now.
And connect where we're connected. We're not separate and isolated, we're connected. Yeah. That's where it all happens, right?
Yeah, and if you remind me, I'll tell you some of the cool stuff about the world pulling itself apart.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to hear that when we get back.
Absolutely. And a little bit about the light and the dark beings. And it just seems to make sense about there's less and less middle these days of, you're either on or off in your life these days, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear more of the spiritual community talking in that way that, these days there's less of a gray area in life, if you're kind of going to be rocking and living your life, or if you're just going to be, hey, you're dealing with the burden.
Yeah, well, the being said to me recently that what's happening with all the vile, disgusting stuff we're learning about is bubbling up. It's because the field can't take the lies anymore. So I was earlier said the field is rapidly rising with or without us.
Yep.
And if we don't rise with it, we're going to find ourselves in some well, they call it frequency illness. So I can talk to that too.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Oh, yes.
That's a great word. I love that.
Yeah,
phrase.
I do too.
Wow.
I like that too. For sure, frequency illness. So is it kind of like the Earth is like a spaceship and she's going, vibrating at a higher resonancy? And
well, it's actually, how a cell goes through meiosis and pulls itself
Mhm.
apart.
Mhm.
Well, the Earth and everything we know to be true about the Earth is actually encased in a cellulose, what would look like a uterus.
Mm.
And it's a cell.
Mhm.
And it's been pulling itself apart for a very, very long time. And this was definitely some of the stuff I didn't want to get into talking about, because this is like surreal out
I
there.
love it.
Yeah. But the Earth and everything we know to be true about the Earth is a cell in the cosmic body.
Mm.
And this has happened to us before, where we have separated and created two Earths.
Uh-huh.
If you know anything about the Hopi prophecies,
Yeah.
they talk about the fact that Earth was given 7 tries
Yes.
to be seeded. And we're moving from the 4th field into the 5th field.
Right.
And it's not 5D like people are, we're going from 3D to 5D. That's not quite right. We're moving from the 3D form into the 5th field, which will still be 3D form.
Are we going into break, Barbara?
Yeah, we're going to break.
Okay.
So when we get back, we're going to continue that from going from 3rd dimension to 5th higher dimension. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Shelly Yates. We'll be right back after this break.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Cosmic Oracle Show. This is your host, Barbara Jean Lindsey. We also have Bradley Peterson co-hosting this evening, and we have with us Shelly Yates. She is the founder, the visionary, the experiencer, the holding of the sacred space for Fire the Grid 2. She's back. She's going to talk to us about it. And right before she does that, I do want to thank you for giving generously to Revolution Radio by going to freedomslips.com. That's freedomslips.com, and give whatever you can, $5, $10 to keep us on the air, because we are an all-volunteer station. So welcome back, Shelly.
Hi.
And so we were talking about pulling the world apart on. So maybe we'll just go with that.
Even Revolution Radio, the intro that they just gave right now, the last thing that they said was denial is not a choice anymore. Denial is not an option anymore.
Right, exactly.
Well, this pulling the world apart is one of those incredible stories. So I was going to speak at the World Transformational Conference in July 2010, and I started having this vision of the world pulling itself apart. And so I started to draw it, and I was like, what is this? Why am I seeing it? And anyway, then came the download, which is pretty classic of how you get stuff. You see something for some time of it, and then you get an understanding. Mm-hmm. So the explanation was the world and everything we know to be part of it. So as much as we can imagine, that's how much of this we are part of. Mm-hmm. So as far out as we can imagine is all part of this cellulose cell the world is in. It's like we're in a cell. And like all cells, time comes when they have to pull themselves apart. one piece goes off and dies, the other cell piece becomes the living, vibrant cell for its time frame. And the Hopi Indians didn't talk about the cell pulling itself apart. They talked about the rainbow bridge showing up, or the portals showing up, right? Or it could be as simple as, you know, you see that strange looking shimmer, and it's like, what is there? You know, this is definitely time to open to the supernatural. There is something here. There is something happening. Like I said, you can go and beat the horse all you want about what the differences are, what you believe in. I believe in angels. Oh, I believe in extraterrestrials. It's the same being, right? The God, the cell of the pool of light, which is the brilliant infinity. That's what they called it, the brilliant infinity.
I love that.
I love their language. I've been writing stuff down. I mean, I pay attention to words, and you and they are great speakers.
Their words are beautiful. So they called it the pool of light, or the brilliant infinity. And we are one cell of light from it, each one of us. But so is all the beings around us. You know, people are like, oh, did you talk to this group of beings or this group of beings? I'm like, you know what, man, keeping track of any of that is like way. I don't go around defining, oh, they came from this star set or they come from this star set.
Right.
They are us. They are us. And they are us to the point that when you die and you expect something to show up for you, Nanny or Poppy or Mommy or Daddy or Jesus or Buddha or whoever is coming to get you, to bring you home, will be one of them.
Yeah.
In that suit. And it will come to be easing you, because that is their only goal with us. Now, you know, people talk about the good beings and the bad beings and the dark ones and the light ones. Well, my 4-year-old son told me after his experience in the death experience that the light and dark were having a war for the planet. And I'll tell you what, Barb, he looked at me and he said, don't worry, Mommy, the light's going to win. I hold it as the nugget.
Yeah.
He's 4 years old and he's coloring, you know, and the light's going to win, Mom, don't worry about it. So people say, oh, don't you worry or fret about the world. And I'm like, no, because the light's going to win.
Yeah.
The thing we need to do is be part of the win, part of the light, part of the choice. You know, there's a little story about the big portal opens, and there's a couple of big centurion guards guarding the portal to the next place. And this very strict religious man shows up with his family, and they go up and they go through the portal, and he goes up and he gets pushed back, and he goes up and he's pushed back, and he goes, wait a minute, don't you know who I am? And they said, well, it doesn't matter who you are. Your energy field is not the right field to go through the portal. It's not a judgment of goodness or badness. It just isness.
I like
the portal is 857 hertz. If you're not 857 hertz, you can't go through. End the conversation. How do we get to be 857 hertz?
Yeah, that's my next question. You read my mind.
Right. Do no harm, honesty and integrity, live your joy fully without judgment, and then say thank you.
Right, gratitude.
Oh, now, I thought you were going to say, pay me.
Now, there's a couple of other little ones that keep us in high tuning, right? Do random acts of kindness. Listen to uplifting music. Because music is the language of the soul. It gives the soul reason to celebrate and feel joy. And again, they reiterate it, live your joy fully without judgment, and say thank you. The more you say thank you for your joy. Now, I'll tell you what, Barb, I have wrestled with depression my whole life. This event didn't make my life any easier.
Oh, come on now. Didn't you get out of jail free card or something?
Yeah, well, I keep looking for my card, but I didn't, it didn't become easier. It actually became more complicated.
Right. Yes.
And everybody's like, well, just think yourself happy or just think yourself healed. And I'm like, that can be done. But it takes a tremendous amount of effort as from our human point.
Right.
So we need to get our frequency up. We need to participate in the freeness. This is up to you.
Right.
5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day will assist you in keeping your high frequency the highest you can get it. Where you sit for 5 minutes is what I joked about the app. You know, we had an app, you could put on the 5-minute app and you could list your joys. Now, I'll tell you, I just started to mention, you know, I've struggled with depression. Sometimes joy for me is the toilet flushes.
Right.
You know, you're having a bad day. You're like, everything sucks. And I don't want to contribute to the betterment of humanity. You know, just leave me alone in my misery, will you?
Right, right.
Well, sometimes
they keep kind of nudging, don't they? They just kind of nudge. They just kind of poke, you know.
Well, and it's for me, I use that to say to people who are listening to me, I honor you. Anybody who hasn't had the proof I've had, and they're doing it on blind faith, like, wow, I honor that, because I have been one that's like, can you send more proof? Can you send more proof? Right.
Yeah.
And we the people are so connected through this process. Anyway, so the Fire the Grid process is about getting your own frequency high enough to get through that veil. Now, I've had lots of people say to me, well, what if it doesn't happen? Okay, what if it doesn't happen?
Yeah,
but we still have to do something different. We, the people.
Right. You can't do the same thing, expect different results, right?
Right. So if we get a portal opening, if we get a rainbow bridge opening, if there's a translucent world that you can step through, oh, that's excellent. That's amazing. That's great. Let's go for it. Let's create. Let's do. Yeah. But if those things don't happen, Barb, we, the people, still have to come back around to being high frequency.
Right.
So the beings talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the very first tier, the first level, we should be doing nothing but focusing our entire human nature, power, ability, funds, and money to achieving Maslow's for every human being on the planet. It is our first agenda. It is our first cause. Joy and peace and comfort and food and shelter and water.
Yeah, and technologically on this planet, we are completely capable of giving everybody water and food and shelter. Completely capable in a very easy way.
So we start talking about that. So what the beings said to me was, like, when the nuclear bomb went off in Japan, I was in a lot of communication with the beings at that time. And I was like, oh, what am I supposed to do? You know, how am I supposed to help? And basically it was like, these are symptoms of a world in chaos. This is their teaching. But when you see these things happening, all this crap is bubbling up to the surface. We the people who are awake and saying yes to the new future have to see that as symptoms of a world in chaos. You can't sit around the water cooler wringing your hands. You are not helping. To discuss it, you're not helping. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, and with birthing, it's not easy, and it's messy, and it's dirty, and it's
right. But we don't talk about the messiness of it. So it's time for us to stop looking at what's wrong and to start talking about what's right, because our mouth is a frequency. And what we create with our mouth is the next of everything.
You know, it's interesting. I listened to a podcast, a Joe Rogan podcast. I forgot the guy who was on, a Navy SEAL guy, a really, really cool guy. But the point of what he was saying was just be extremely careful of when something comes into words out of your mouth. He goes, no matter what's going on, there is a massive jump to something that's a serious thing inside of you, to when you put it into a word, then it comes back on you. You know, yeah. So it's interesting now.
And that's what they said about us, hair. They said, so when the big massive thing happened in Japan, people were like, oh, did you hear about it? Did you hear about it? And what happens is you just build this heavy, dark
Fear.
yeah, and everybody's kind of hunching and going, oh no. And so what the being
There's
said
a storm coming.
right, what the being said to do was, this is the time to straighten your back and to say, that's symptoms of a world in chaos. I honor you,
Yeah.
send you love, and now I turn from you.
And I choose freedom.
Right? So now you're going to choose to talk about other things. It doesn't mean that we don't honor and respect what's happened to that particular atrocity and negative event. It just means that we're not going to feed any more energy into it.
Right, right.
So on July 19th, 2021, what the beings wanted us to do was flood the junctures. And
what do they mean by that?
Well, so this is the first time I've seen what I've always seen before is the grid just lights up. But this was like liquid light, and it's going to come from you. So you're going to find, if you meditate or pray and those things bring you joy, fill your boots, meditate and pray, like get in there and do it as long as it brings you joy.
I love that.
If those things don't bring you joy and you only do them because, oh, my grandmother taught it to me, or, I learned it in this church or that church. If those things are why you're doing a meditation or a prayer, don't do it. You're far better off to sit in your joy.
Right.
And what could your joy be? It could be anything. So basically, what joy are you bringing with you? So if I said to you today, you're going to a new planet.
Yeah.
And you can bring all the things that are joyful, that you love. Start collecting them.
That would be fun. Laughter would be number one.
Right? Start collecting what individually you want to bring, because the thing is, they want us to understand is that this is not some sort of we're the Borg and you're being assimilated.
Right.
It is our individuality that they actually applaud.
Right. It's honoring our uniqueness, right?
Right. That they want us
to the table.
And so Fire the Grid 2 is about bringing your individual joy to the table. But with the idea and concept that if your joy is Rocky Road ice cream, your intention that follows that is that every human being gets to have the experience. Right?
Are you reading my mind here, Shelly, or what? That's my favorite ice cream.
Well, there you go. So everybody gets to experience it. My son loves cars, supercars, luxury cars. And he's like, well, do we get to bring whatever we want to the new world? And I'm like, absolutely. And he says, well, I want everybody to get the experience of driving in these cars. So then we started brainstorming that you could go to the race car tracks and get in one and drive, because there's a stable of 20 or 50 of them, because we get to create the new world. Imagine a world with free travel. You get on a plane, you get off, you get over, oh, that's my sister, it's my cousin, let's go see the temple, let's go to see the ruins, because the pursuit of happiness and the experience of pleasure and joy was what we were built for. But something's gone wrong here.
Right.
And we want to
beings.
Well, we want to think our way out of this now. We want to dream our way out of whatever we've created. And Barb, again, we don't have to get into why it's happened.
Right. But we can dream a new dream, whatever that dream, we can dream a new dream. And
right. And if we start to talk about that in our day-to-day life, imagine a world where, imagine, they said to me one night, the being said, no man is truly so satiated while another goes hungry.
Right.
And isn't that true? Because if you go in and sit in a fancy restaurant to enjoy your steak dinner, there is a piece of you, the awakened ones, that goes, geez, somebody, this is almost, like I shouldn't be having this because somebody else has got nothing. But that won't help us either. Like, we can't come down and beat ourselves up. We have to have our joy and intend it for everyone and say, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you're having a great meal and if it's expensive and you're out with people in a, you know, a fancy situation, I know myself, I struggle, oh, you know, I shouldn't, oh, you know, and immediately your brain starts to shrink you down that somehow you're doing something. So it's put your shoulders back again and say, I intend this joy for everybody.
Yeah, and if you're living by the three principles, your success doesn't hurt anybody else. Other people are not less successful because you're successful, as long as you're
Correct.
following those principles.
Right. And of those principles, you never kick a dog. Well, something gets harmed. You know, they're just the simplest of principles.
Yeah.
And it's not even rules, you know, like these beings are not about, they're about encouraging us. It's almost as if, you know, if you said to your children, if you fenced in your yard in the back and you said to your kids, off you go, there's a bunch of playthings, you don't care what they play in that yard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've provided a safe environment, you've provided all the things that could be fun. Well, that's what we've got here, you know. And
Go outside of that, careful.
Right. Well, like I said, you're either moving towards a high frequency choice or a low frequency choice. So you steal something, low frequency choice.
You always
Now
have you always have a choice of where you put your energy.
Right. And even our thoughts and our words that come out of our mouth, you know, you say something that comes out of your mouth like, oh, I hate that, whatever. Well, the word hate is the most horrible. It's got spikes. It's the worst word, right? Now you can save yourself. You go, oh, wait now, cancel, cancel, cancel. It's not what I want to say. I want to practice being able to say, hey, that person really, you know, gets under my skin, but I must be learning something from them. It's all about, at this point, finding a way to be good with yourself and high frequency thoughts and mindsets. And if you're doing something against your own nature, you don't have to tell a soul. Your field is going to drop.
You already, exactly.
It's like a blind person walking with a stick. You know, that stick isn't telling them where it's safe to walk. That stick tells them where not to walk.
Correct.
Where are the edges? Where are my edges?
Right. And so between now and the Fire the Grid event, which, like I said, is not a lot of time, and they've never, ever had a sense of urgency. So, you know, I told them I would do everything that they wanted, do as quickly as I could put it out there, the way that they wanted it put out there. I am just a messenger. They told me there was other people with this message. I haven't found anybody. I keep asking. Maybe you're doing, you know, Fire the Grid type of thing.
Yeah.
But there's two interesting women I will note here. Dolores Cannon.
Oh, yes.
And a woman named Lynn Grabhorn. Both of these women have died.
Lynn, I'm not familiar with the Lynn.
Grabhorn. Grabhorn. Now, she had a similar experience to me, and she started having communication with beings. And if you go to my site, you'll find some stuff about her, because her experiences and my experiences were so unbelievably alike. And at the end of her second book, it's called Dear God, What's Happening to Us? She talks about the grid workers. And she says she says everything in this book was actually written for the grid workers. But it's going to benefit everybody.
I love it.
Dolores Cannon also wrote about the grid workers.
Yes, she did.
And there's no doubt that that's what I'm here for. You know, there was the 3 waves Dolores Cannon talked about, and I always thought I was a first wave, but I am a grid worker, and whatever it is that I'm here to tell you about is what I want people to understand, that there's nothing in it for me. It's just time to tell you what you really are. And like I said, as soon as you can say yes to that huge, huge thought, yes, there's something more to me than this body.
Right.
That's it. Now, as soon as you say yes to that first thing, it's like dominoes. Everything else becomes possible. So they broke us into 3 types of people. They called us the dogma-based people who already had religion. And they said, offer for your guidance and consideration. If your God is omnipotent, why is this not possible?
Ooh. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's it.
I like it.
Yep. The second one was New Age metaphysical people who you don't have to say too much for them to understand there's a being and a suit, you know, a human being. And what we're calling on for Fire the Grid is for you to step up and say, yes, I know there's more than this. And yes, I want it. I want it to come forward. I'm calling it forward. I'm creating it forward. I'm putting in my personal joy. What was it I was just telling you?
The third one, the three, the third level of being, I guess. There's the dogma. There's the.
Oh yes, and the third type of being are fence sitters. And they said fence sitters, which are good people that would do something if they knew what the heck to do. But for the most part, you know, they're your jeans and t-shirts wearing type of people, and they don't want to see themselves as freaky or weird, or I don't want to have to put on a outfit and dance with my tambourine in order to be part of these things. Well, you know, this was the most amazing. When Fire the Grid happened, I got called to different people's homes and stuff so I could talk to small groups. And this man calls me, and when I show up at his farm, he has on a pair of knee boots, rubbers for cow poop, and he's in a bathing suit, a Speedo bathing suit, and a bathrobe. And he's walking around his farm talking to the cows. Get in that yard over there, you know, I'm going to eat you first. And I'm laughing my head off. And he says, do you know what? I am the least person that would ever believe in this woo-woo stuff. But he said, you're right. There's something there. And I'm going to do Fire the Grid with the cows.
Very cool.
And it was just amazing. So then we had other situations with Fire the Grid where I was given a clear message. When sinner and saint pick up the flag for the same cause, you will really see how powerful this is. And I was like, what the hell? Why can't you guys be just like straightforward? Why do we have to have the flowery prose? But anyway, that same day I got 2 phone calls. One was from a minister, a devout, you know, deep South religion, who was calling to tell me that him and his congregation were going to do Fire the Grid. And cool. I was excited, you know, that's great. Yeah. And then this other woman from the porn industry in Louisiana, and she was a famous porn star, and she called the same day, and she said, all my friends in the porn industry are taking the day off to do Fire the Grid.
Oh, I love it.
And the message had been, when sinner and saint pick up the flag for the same cause.
I love it.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And it was just so authentic, real, like taking.
Which ones are the sinners?
Yours. Yeah, exactly.
They didn't give you that hint, did they?
Good one. but it is about picking up this with your own sense of self. What is your joy? You know, give some thought to what you want to do. I know we, the people who were involved with this with me, we wanted to just make it a huge celebration. You know, everybody globally at 11:11 GMT is going to sit down and talk about, celebrate, eat food, make love, play music. It's the world's biggest online party.
I love it. Celebrate us, celebrate our beautiful planet, our connection,
and our bodies,
and our
thank you. And you know what? See another world. Talk about it in your small groups, right? Like, come.
Your piece would be good.
So Shelly, if people listening or get connected to this that have some kind of, you know, email list or social media influence, is there a place where they can reach out to you to sort of get plugged in and promote this quickly?
As far as I know, everything is on the sites. Where to connect with.
Can I show the site?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't I let me just one moment here? I'm going to pull up the site for everyone. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
There we go. Fire the Grid 2. This is firethegrid2.org.
Yep. So, now up in the right hand corner it says contact. So.
Perfect. Okay, good, good. So fire in the grid, flood the junctures. And again, Barbara was starting to ask about the junctures. Could we
Yes.
just understand that element of this before we get more into the depth of this new?
Right. Well, if you take a hexagon, you can put 6 hexagons around it. You know, each side butts up against each other. So basically, when you flood your own hexagon, this liquid light, this is what they're talking about, flood the junctures. So wherever there's a juncture between a hexagon and the next hexagon, that's you. That's where you're pulsing your own light. You're pulsing your own truth. You're pulsing your yes. Yes, I desire something more for my life, my planet, my people. Yes, you know. So when you pulse your own juncture that's hooked up to another one, it looks to me like liquid light flooding down these straws. Now, I used to call them straws, but more and more I've noticed that they look like capillaries. So everything now, what used to look much more sterile, I think, has become very much more organic. When I see it on, you know, in my visions and different things, it's very much more organic. And so it's almost like flood the junctures. It just came to me as like, is our blood. It is the light blood of us.
Which it's essentially sharing it with the grid around you, sharing the light with the grid around you.
Exactly.
Crank it up.
Crank it up. And again, it's for free. There's no huge event that you have to pay for. You don't have to join anything. I think the girls have got it set up that you can give us your emails or some sort of sign-ons or log-ons. Basically, what the beings said about Fire the Grid 1, which was back in 2007, was they wanted to know how many of us there were. And so each one of us that fired the grid, we got counted amongst how many of us there were. Now, something's coming to tell you about. It was Don't Judge Joe's Joy. And they talked about the fact that this man, Joe, comes home from work every night. You know, he's a good old guy. He's got a job as a construction worker. He pays his taxes. He does the best he can. He comes home, he sits down in his easy chair, and he pushes his easy chair back with his can of beer, and he says, now this is living. Like, I'm done my job, I'm finished, I'm home in my easy chair with my football game and my can of beer. Now, at that second, Joe is in high frequency. He's kicked his feet back, he's saying this is living, he's acknowledging this is joy. Now, all he has to do is add, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's it. Anything in threes is powerful. And don't judge Joe's joy, because somebody else might say, oh, a can of beer and a rocking chair, that's not joy. Well, maybe not for where you are or who you are, but for Joe, that's his joy. And what we want is that when Joe practices thank you, thank you, thank you, the next thing you see, he's out in the yard with his grandkids. Got a new joy. It evolves. That's what happens with joy, is that you start off with a joy that might be small. Like I said, on some of my depressed days, a flushing toilet and running water is what I'm being thankful for. So Joe's gratitude for his can of beer, his football game, and his chair, his rocker recliner, is where we have to go as long as Joe is saying thank you. That's it. As long as we're saying thank you for anything, right? We're contributing to raising the grid field. But more than that, we're contributing to becoming high frequency ourselves.
And so with that, with flooding the junctures, like flooding the junctures with your light, with your liquid light, what would that be with the relationship to like your love light? I haven't heard the word love, and I'm, the love light, that love part of you.
Well, I think love is such a funny thing, because you can say you can say all sorts of things and then get hit in the head with a book. There's a story about a man who where I grew up in Newfoundland. It's a little island. And the guy was saying, you know, what is God? What is God? What is God? And the kid goes, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And anyway, all of a sudden the guy comes hitting him in the back of the head saying, God is love. God is love. God is love.
Damn it.
And the guy says, for the rest of my life, I knew what God was. But I just didn't know what love was.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So, you know, love is one of those words that is so incredibly subjective. I love you as long as you do. I love you as long as you will, right? I love you. So I think the concept of really tapping into your joy and then being in gratitude is the highest we can come up with in our field. It's not, joy and gratitude are not subjective like love is.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean,
I was gonna say long faces don't fit through the gates of heaven, right?
well, yeah, and the fact that, you know, this is a love generated project. Well, the person you have to love the most in this project is yourself. You have to truly acknowledge the divinity that lives inside of you and say yes to, I am worth everything. Yes, I am powerful just being here. I deserve the best that this experience has to bring me.
Wow.
Exactly. And so when the people come, let's say on the 11/11, no matter where they are in the world, and they can have people with them, they can have family or friends or whoever they want to have with them. And how long are they holding the energy for?
Well, the being said that we have the energy available to us for 27 hours, starting at 11 p.m. the night before.
Oh, that's good to know.
So it's 27 hours, which was the same thing as far as the grid. And they said that the energy was being brought down and on gamma rays, that a lot of what was happening in that day was a lot of wake up code, a lot of, you know, some things, we're not in Kansas anymore kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so 11/11 GMT is what they said, you've already used it. It already works, you know, apply it there for an hour. And I certainly would encourage, now some people are 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and if that's the case, the same thing Fire the Grid happened with in part 1 was write yourself a letter about your setting your intentions. And make it part of, you know, write it before you go to bed and set it on the nightstand and set your intentions that, you know, I really can't get up at 3 o'clock. I've got to work, whatever. You know, you can participate by writing things out because that's the second most powerful thing, our voice. Yeah. So, you know, write it out on a slip of paper and just put it on the nightstand before you go to bed and talk about the different joys that you want to bring with you to the new field.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you've broken out the time zones here. It makes it easy for everybody to come here and just find their local 11/11 time.
Well, that was a beautiful friend of mine, Victor Lyon, from he lives in upstate New York in a little trailer with his all his animal friends, and he generously donated that to us. He's just amazing. So thank you, Victor.
Thank you, Victor. All right, so at the top we have the home, global event times, and the plan. So did you fire the grid? Why fire the grid? The problem and the plan. Very nice. I love your graph.
So it's Fire the Grid grew out of what we did with my son. That's where we got to bring this back to, is that, you know, we had a dying boy, dead, flatlined, you know, rotten meat. By the third day he was in his coma, the smell of rotten meat off that child was absolutely horrible. And, you know, the doctors were pleading with me to unplug him because, like, he's in the last phase of decay. His bowels passed out of his body. It was just incredible. And he smelled like rotten meat. And, you know, nobody said that to me. Which was very, very kind. But when he came out of it, like, I went down the hallway and I said these words, "Why have you forsaken me?" Totally out of character for me to even think that. and somebody calls and says, come, he's awake. And I go in the room, and here he is, spontaneous regeneration. He smells like a newborn baby, that, you know, that baby smell. And all the blood is running clear. Everything's fine. He's amazing. And this is where this is growing out of. Fire of the Grid came out of a dying boy coming back to life because we followed the instructions.
Right. And so we're kind of doing that with, I'll bring it back. Earlier, we wanted to talk about the frequency illness. So he had kind of like a.
Right. Now, frequency. So here's how I describe frequency. So I don't know how much time we have left. So in the new medicine that's coming up, you're going to go into the doctor and you're going to say, oh, I feel terrible. And instead of the doctor asking a bunch of questions, the first thing they're going to do is pull out a probe, and they're going to open it up, and they're going to put it in your energy field, which normally sits about 3 inches off your body. So it fluctuates a little bit, but they're going to put that probe in your field, and they're going to look at the frequency number on the probe. They're going to go, oh, look at you. You're only 100 hertz. No wonder you feel terrible, because anything under 500 hertz is the lowest density humans can have. And if you think about crushing gravity on us, you know, hands and feet pain, joint pain, I would never hazard to call any of them any specific type of disease, but it resembles fibromyalgia with great pain throughout the body with no real sense of where it's coming from. So what they said was happening was that the frequency field around the earth is rising, with or without us.
Right.
And the only people who are going to play in the new frequency are the ones that have the right frequency, with or without us. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to play in the new field, you have to have the right frequency to get into the new field. Now, as it turns out, having the right frequency in 2021 down here is going to start to level off some of these aches and pains. You know, I said about going to the doctor and they put the probe in, they check your field. Well, you want your field to be up over 800, and 500 is the field of love and compassion. So the next ones, joy and gratitude, are up the field even higher.
And measuring the frequency, is this something that people can do?
Well, like Princeton University measured the frequency. They have some sort of system that they used the last time. This machine I'm talking about is a medical machine that is coming. The being showed it to me. It's going to be a diagnostic tool. Always reminds me of Star Trek, when Bones would get out the probe. So this is a kind of a probe that's going to measure your energy field. Now, the thing that I've discovered is that 500 energy field, it takes a great deal of energy. If you're struggling, as many of us are right now, with depression and, you know, that sense of what the world's gone to shit and what hope have we got and those types of things, they tend to keep us really low frequency. And the darkness likes us to be low frequency. Mm-hmm. The darkness is, you know, the darkness can't survive in the light, and the new field is all light. So let's get there so the darkness can't join us in that. It's not good or bad. It's just, it doesn't serve us.
It's momentum. You're going to be there longer and more if you keep going that way, whichever way.
Right, exactly. So getting your frequency up is going to be really, really important. Like I said, 5 minutes a day, just considering the things that you find joyful. And sometimes, like I said, the bathroom, the tap, you turn on running water, you're not feeling joyful, but at least you can come up with gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, especially in North America living, we pretty much everybody gets something to eat. You know, I'm not saying that most of us have one thing or the other. I'm saying that we are in a better situation than most parts of the world. So find your gratitude in whatever joy has been brought to your world, you know. And these are where it's individual. We don't know what somebody else's joy would be. And as long as it just doesn't go counter to do no harm and honesty and integrity. you know, the guy who wanted to rob the bank. Well, that's great, but you can't rob a bank with doing no harm and honesty and integrity.
Yeah.
And I can't express enough that this project's for free. Nobody's getting anything. Nobody got anything from the first Fire of the Grid. You know, we worked tirelessly, a group of 3 of us, really. And there's 3 of us again this time around. And nobody's getting paid. It is a labor of love that we want to elevate. We want to move into the highest possible level that we can get.
So where will you be?
Probably here in Nova Scotia. I have considered going to Quebec, where one of my friends who's doing the project with me is going to be. So I have contemplated that.
Very fun. So the first Fire in the Grid, you said there was just basically 3 of you and email and no social media. So how did this thing really take the turn? What was that sort of, hey, we're rocket shipping now, this thing's going to happen?
Well, it was so funny because I had all the instructions on how to build the site. And then the 2 people, Bradfield and Annie, came into my life and they built it and they followed the instructions. And we made jokes about, you know, why do poor people have to do things for free? Because we had no money, we had nothing between us. And I sat in the kitchen. So I got the information that the site was all ready and we were going to launch it. And I sat in the kitchen. I went, okay, all right. So, you know, I'm going to tell my 10 friends and you're going to tell 10 friends. And at the end, we'll have 100 friends, you know, and I'm being sarcastic to the universe. And then I said, so let's do this thing. Bring it on. Come on, let's do it. And oh, it wasn't very long and the phone rang and it was George Norrie. And it was his producer, and he wanted me to come on and do a talk show coast to coast. And I laughed and I said, well, you know, when will we be doing that? Figuring, you know, 3 or 4 months away. And he said, no, tonight. No, we're going to call you back tonight.
Wow.
So I remember.
How did he get turned on? How did they get turned on to this?
Apparently somebody I sent an email to, because how we did it was, do you remember the old, what were they called? You know, where you passed on the email, chain letter. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. So we did a chain letter email. Basically, I wrote a letter that said, look, here's what I know. And if you feel truth in it, pass this email on to somebody you love.
Yep. Okay. I think that rings a bell.
Yeah. And it just started to get passed around and it became enormous. And then, of course, I did George Norrie's radio show that night. And I remember sitting in the kitchen making a joke to God. I said, God, or whatever you are, you know, I was like, that was a little too fast.
Can I have some dinner first next time?
Yeah, like, so it was really amazing. I would have projects that, you know, would need some money. One of the big projects came up. I needed some money for something that the beings asked me to do. And so within 24 hours, I had $13,000. Because as soon as they would say to me, you know, do this or that to get whatever you needed. Now, again, this one that's coming up in 2 weeks, you know, we haven't had any real time with it, but I do know that every good heart, right? It's one heart at a time. It's standing up and saying yes. And we don't have much power right now. We're living in a world where a lot of power seems to be drained away from us. And we could easily talk about that and cause our frequencies to become very low, because that's kind of debilitating and sad and oppressive. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what we can create with the future.
Right. And especially when we all come together, that's the key. That's why I love what you're doing is.
Yeah. And it is coming together. And I know we've had lots of mass meditations and people coming together, but this project is for the people, by the people. And the beings that I have been working with, you know, I don't know if you guys know that you can speak to the future as well, because in the work here, I don't know what you have. You're showing me the Fire of the Grid sign. Down below this is symbols. So keep going down.
Oh, the countdown, very important.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a countdown. We've got 16 days to reach his. Now, right here, do you see this symbol here?
Yes.
Okay, so those three symbols came to me like everything else. And eventually I had the three symbols and I was like, what do you want me to do with them? And they said they're a wake-up code. People who see these symbols are just going to have a sense of truth in what you're doing. And they're not going to know why they feel it. It's just going to have that sense of truth. And I said, well, where are they from? What are they? And they said, you sent them back to yourself. So the future me sent them back.
That's why you put the word, remember under it.
Yeah. And the code is in these symbols where basically it's like, hey, listen, guys, don't you remember what's happening here? You know, hey guys, come on, pay attention, think, come on. You know, and it's like tap, tap, tap. And the fact that, you know, I've always admired the fact that the beings have always wanted to do everything for the people for free. You know, I could have easily put my stamp on a bunch of stuff, I guess, and made a bunch of money. But money's not that important to me if I don't have any planet to spend it on.
Right.
You know, and even money in the long run is buying stuff more of what I need, right? This is where we start looking at now, who am I? What am I? What do I need? How do I be here differently?
Yeah.
So the remember you, do you think with your work with your beings, do you think that is your star family, or that's you from the future telling you?
Oh, it's definitely. Yeah, I've had several communications now with this part of myself. Yeah. And we've made time linear. We the people have made time linear. It's not linear. As a matter of fact, time doesn't even really exist. So, you know, and in the shamanic world, there's all pieces of ourselves. So there's a piece of me in the future that obviously I have committed to do this project, and they've sent me back the information that I need to do it.
For now.
And it is the simplest message. Find that hour of time and spend an hour with your family or your friends or yourself in any kind of love activity, joy activity. You know, I'd really love to be eating a giant chocolate cake, but I am not sure that's on my food plan that day. Because ultimately we're still human, right? We still got to take care of the vessel.
Right, exactly. Well, so I just love it. And so we're almost to close. We have 5 minutes
already. Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, anytime you guys want to ask more questions, if you put together some stuff, I will happily tell people everything I know.
Thank you so much. And I have one quick question. Would there be a live stream for this?
Oh, I don't know. Nobody has mentioned that to me yet, but that doesn't mean that they might not do something. I will definitely, when we get off this call, ask them if that's something they, wouldn't it be great if we could just all patch into the world's giantest Zoom and all be party with our hats and our blowers?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm down for that.
Well, it's like party.
Well, you do that anyway, Barbara.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need a whole lot of pushing with that. That's true.
Fun. It's a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
And it fits so much with just the conversation of where really spirituality is refining itself to these days. The positivity and really be what you want to be. You know, it's the freedom of being positive inside of yourself.
Yeah, and within those principles, do no harm, honesty, integrity, seeking out joy and living it without judgment and gratitude. Within those, you're so much more free. Yeah. You don't have to look to somebody to tell you who to be or how to be. You become self-policing. You do things because they're the right things to do. Now, when the beings talked about Maslow's, for instance, it's the right thing to do, to start to turn our minds to how do we feed the world first and foremost.
And
Doesn't mean we have to achieve it. We just have to turn towards it.
yeah.
You know, we're creating it. Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's create that into being.
Yep.
And when you live by those principles and you're interacting with other people, you can tell very quickly who's also living by those fundamentals in your conversation.
Oh,
those
absolutely.
are the people that you gravitate towards.
Yeah. Well, the big joke was the yellow ribbon, which we won't get to have, but you know, in the virtual world, we got our yellow ribbon on because we're coming together, and we are a powerful, powerful force.
Yes,
we just got to remember it.
We are shining on. Look out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again, Shelly Yates, and we wish you all the best with Fire the Grid 2, Flood the Junctures. All of our listeners can go to firethegrid2.org. That's firethegrid, the number 2.org. And you'll be able to find out what your time, the event time for where you are on the planet, and hook up with your friends and have a celebration and have your joy. Have your joy and connect with all of us. We're going to be there. Bradley and I are going to be there for sure. And
we'll be there. And everybody share your social media, your email lists with Shelly. Go to contact on firethegrid2.org and say you've got people that will listen.
Yeah. And anybody wants to talk to me, you know, I'm at the point in life now that I'm as weird as they come. I've put it out there. So we might as well keep the conversation going. So anybody wants to talk, I'll talk.
Sounds great. Well, thank you again. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another Cosmic Oracle show. Have a great 4th of July and celebrate our independence from all pain and suffering. How's that? And celebrate our love and joy and peace and unity with one another this wonderful vacation. And in Canada, enjoy the beauty there. We want to come and visit. We do. So we'll have to come and visit you, Shelly.
Well, listen, I got lots of sleeping space. Pack up your bags and come on.
That sounds wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, well, thanks everybody again. Thank you, Bradley, for being the best co-host.
Very fun. Amazing conversation, Shelly. Really.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Bye, Calvert. Bye, everybody. Thank you.